I was lucky actually say to be in Kumaon. Kumaon Hostel is constructed in a very different way. So it has that, you can talk to everyone else at the same time. It has 2-3 big wings where you could talk to everyone on the same floor, talk to everyone in different floors at the same time.
Yeah.
And that was a beautiful way of setting it up. Yeah, I mean, IIT is a great leveler. As I said, I grew up in Delhi. So I thought, like most IITians think, you're the best gift to mankind. And you, having grown up in a big city, you kind of have access to everything.
Yeah.
And when you land up in IIT and you see that, well, on an average, people are smarter than you, and they have achieved things bigger than what you achieved with much less resource than you had. It's a very humbling experience. For me, I would probably highlight is the biggest experience at IIT was outside the classroom. I did fine in acads, but my heart lay in sports. Right. And having played sports right through my school career, having kind of given up sports in my high school because of IIT preparations, I kind of went about it with a vengeance. The biggest takeaway from IIT was how to take initiative, how to double down on what you are passionate about.
Right.
How to work with very different type of people, still get things done. Yeah. And be humble, because there's always someone better than you in anything you do at any point in time. So you're always learning. I have the fortune of backing one of the best entrepreneurs, one of the best companies in tech industry in India today. So I invested in a company called Dream 11, which I think everybody knows. At least people who know cricket will know Dream 11. But back in the days when we invested in Dream 11, it was a very small company. Just find what you're passionate about. Take the time, don't rush into it. Try out everything, but you find what you're passionate about, just go double down on that. Whether it's certain area of research, whether it's certain type of profession, certain idea, and let everyone help you to succeed in that. And so don't spend the 4 years not finding it, because if you don't, then the rest of the 10 years will become more challenging for you, and you'll take much more time finding that. That'll be my message.
Hi folks, welcome to this episode of Dil Se IIT Delhi podcast. Today we have with us Mr. Sumit Sinha, who is an electrical engineering pass out from the batch of 2001 and is now the co-founder and managing partner at Filter Capital India Advisors. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you for having me.
We would love to have this conversation on campus. That's how it usually functions, but thank you for hosting us in Mumbai.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming. I would love to do it in campus as well, but yeah, we'll probably do another round later.
So anything that you look forward to when you come back to Delhi and visit the campus? Is there any particular place that you would like to go to?
No, I typically would first go to the football ground and see how that's doing.
Right.
It was not that great back in the days, but there were times of the year when it'll be nice and green. Times of the year it'll be like arid, brown. Spent a bunch of my time there, so yeah, that's probably the first place I'll go.
Right. So we have a new development as well, just beside the football ground, the cricket ground, right in the middle, which is the new Mithil Sports Complex.
Yes. I would love to see that.
Yeah. So
this is not at SAC.
SAC is different.
Okay, this is in addition to SAC. Okay.
Yes. So we have other facilities such as squash court, table tennis rooms, chess.
Okay, this was what SAC used to have as well.
Yes, so a lot of things have shifted there, but the quality of equipment is like world class now.
Oh, nice.
All the training of the athletes for the inter-IIT competitions and other competitions happens there.
Oh, very nice. No, definitely would love to look that up.
And football ground is one, but any fond memories from the hostel?
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky actually say to be in Kumaon. Kumaon Hostel is constructed in a very different way. So it has that, you can talk to everyone else at the same time. It has 2-3 big wings where you could talk to everyone on the same floor, talk to everyone in different floors at the same time.
Yeah.
And that was a beautiful way of setting it up. In other hostels, we would see, people just stuck with their wing mates.
Yeah.
Probably a group of 6, 7.
Yeah.
We used to have larger groups because of that. So that was a beautiful feature of the hostel. But for that, yeah, we were mavericks. Kumaon, I don't know if it's still the case, but we were missionaries. Obviously, BRCA was a big focus at Kumaon. People would go to all types of limits to make sure we get that cup. I was the sports secchi, so my job was GC. And we were a pretty good bunch on that as well. Yeah, it's obviously, hostel is the biggest part of your experience at IIT, so I'm pretty happy. I would believe I was in the best.
Yeah, so I'm sure that also comes after, like, this was a legacy built over like 4 years. But what was the first sort of moment when you realized you're going to be in IIT and then also be in Kumaon?
After getting into IIT?
Yes. Like, so while getting into IIT, what
Yeah.
was your reaction like? How did you get to know?
Yeah.
And then also when you were allotted Kumaon.
Yeah, I mean, well, the choice for IIT Delhi was very simple for me.
Okay.
I grew up in Delhi.
Right.
And based on my rank, I could have gone to different IITs, and a lot of people said take electrical in Kanpur,
Right.
which is probably the best at that time.
Yeah.
But then a lot of my friends who were there in that room said, in Kanpur, you don't have Priya Cinema, nor do you have Chanakya Cinema. I think both of the name they have changed now.
Sure.
So IIT Delhi has this benefit of being equidistant between two great cinema halls, and that kind of clinched it for me. I said, yeah, I'd rather be in IIT Delhi and stay in Delhi. It's a city I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
But when I was allotted Kumaon, actually I didn't have any context of Kumaon. In fact, I don't know if other people do that research, but we didn't really think about which hostel we get allocated to, and maybe I didn't know people from Kumaon or from other hostels.
Right.
A lot of my friends actually were in Karakoram.
Right.
At least my friends from DPS hostel,
Yeah.
where I was present. So they all said, "Oh, why don't you change it to Karakoram?" I was really trying to do that, but I realized that's not going to happen. So
Yes.
I settled for Kumaon, and that has been a great experience.
So what were those 4 years like? What was the most significant change which you felt after finishing up those 4 years?
Yeah, I mean, IIT is a great leveler. As I said, I grew up in Delhi. So I thought, like most IITians think, you're the best gift to mankind. And you, having grown up in a big city, you kind of have access to everything.
Yeah.
And when you land up in IIT and you see that, well, on an average, people are smarter than you, and they have achieved things bigger than what you achieved with much less resource than you had. It's a very humbling experience. And that, I think, was the biggest change, where you get a chance to spend a lot of time with the best and the brightest.
Yeah.
And work as a team with them. For me, I would probably highlight is the biggest experience at IIT was outside the classroom. I did fine in CADs, but my heart lay in sports.
Right.
And having played sports right through my school career, having kind of given up sports in my high school because of IIT preparations, I kind of went about it with a vengeance.
Right.
So I used to play 4 or 5 sports at any point in time. In any particular day, I would probably play 1 or 2 sports.
Yeah.
And I was the go-to guy in hostel, where some of the senior alums will come saying, "Who's the guy I can play squash with?" I said, "Oh, there's the guy who's in NB5. Go and meet him."
Right.
And increasingly, I put a price on it as well. I used to say, if you can give me dinner, not at KLS, but at Mezban or Rainbows, I will play squash with you today, or play basket.
Yeah.
So that was actually the highlight of my experience, was the sports side of it. Eventually, I went on all the inter-IITs, beautiful memories from that.
Sure.
You're a contingent of 100, spending a week in another IIT, and that kind of camaraderie and the team experience that you get is amazing. And you learn a lot from that.
Sure.
And that's why the biggest takeaway from IIT was how to take initiative, how to double down on what you are passionate about.
Right.
How to work with very different type of people, still get things done.
Yeah.
And be humble, because there's always someone better than you in anything you do at any point in time. So you're always learning. But classroom was not the highlight.
So what was
my experience?
Yeah. What about the experience that you had in other IITs? So was it a vivid experience in terms of the infrastructural differences? IIT Delhi being smaller in the area.
Yeah.
Not in spirit for sure.
Yeah.
But what was those interactions like?
All these campuses are so big, you really don't miss the size side of it. But you're right. The sports infrastructure, for example, in IIT Bombay was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I still remember the hockey field and we were playing hockey match. Oh man, the ball actually doesn't jump around.
Yeah.
What a surprise.
Yeah.
Right? Because back in the days we used to play on grass and the ball has its own mind. It'll kind of go away from you whenever you think it's coming in front of you.
Sure.
But at the same time, I always thought IIT Delhi was the most tightly knit of all contingents. But yeah, other IITs had their own flavor.
Yeah.
And we generally were never the winners. We were generally, I think the best we did was third in one of the inter IITs. But we were pretty good in football and hockey, so I'm quite proud of that. But yeah, I think every IIT has its own flavor. One thing I did realize when I went to IIT Bombay is that the IIT Bombay don't have hostel names.
Yeah.
They have 1, 2, 3 going on.
Yes.
And I used to joke about it and say, in our inter-hostel matches, which are actually more important actually over the course of your year, you can actually say Jai Kumar or Jai Kara. What do you guys say?
Yeah.
Jai 1, Jai 2? I mean, it was almost a joke, and they would actually say, it's kind of boring not having names.
Right. So how did the switch happen? Leaving engineering, I understand that you were taking a lot of varied initiatives, right?
Yeah.
And learning more rounded things. You were exposed to different things, right? So finance, how does the transition happen?
Yeah, it's IIT does prepare you for all types of careers because it takes you through the grind academically as well as extracurriculars.
Yeah.
And that teaches the ability to pick up new things, learn new things. And so finance, in a way, there are a lot of us in finance, by the way, from IIT. So it's not surprising because the core foundation of finance is mathematics or analytical skills. On top of that, if you apply the ability to understand how businesses work and understand how people operate, which is some of the things you start picking up. I don't think the core business side of the knowledge was from IIT.
Yes.
But the ability to assess people, ability to work with people, ability to build relationship with a diverse set of people, right, is something which is core to our business, which is private equity. And that is a lot comes from my experience at IIT, because that's where you get the first exposure to those type of skills. So I agree. Finance was a career that eventually I was very passionate about, very excited about. So I stuck to it. And definitely, I do invest in technology companies, but I don't claim any of my knowledge from electrical engineering is applied in my current job. But I think a lot of the learnings do apply.
Was this an informed decision which happened in IIT, or it happened over a period of time as a transitionary thing for you?
Yeah, at IIT I was very clear. I don't think I'm going to be sitting in front of the screen and coding.
Right.
After IIT. So right in my second year, I remember in my third year, I did apply. I did have a GRE plan, and I did go on till learning the dictionary you have to learn, right? I ended up till A. I didn't even start with B. So I was very clear, even in the middle of my third year, that technology as a profession is not for me.
Sure.
And so that leaves with only a few, at least back then, very few options. It's consulting.
Yeah.
At that time, there was no finance role straight out of IIT.
Yeah.
So it was basically 2-3 roles that would have fit my passion. It was marketing at HUL or consulting at Deloitte or McKinsey. And I was fortunate that HUL dinged me because that was the first one I applied. And if you get the first, then you can only apply one more time.
Yes.
Because then my second was Deloitte, which I got through. And I had one more shot at it. So I did apply to McKinsey and I got into McKinsey. So it was very clear that it has to be something outside of technology. But McKinsey set up the platform for me to think about private equity and finance.
Right.
Because in McKinsey, I was part of the corporate finance practice.
Right.
Which focuses a lot on mergers and acquisition and due diligence work for private equity.
Sure.
And that's where it opened my eyes, and you will see a lot of McKinsey folks in venture capital and private equity in India. So I kind of went along with that trajectory.
What role does then MBA play, which you pursued from Wharton?
Yeah. No, MBA is at least in our career, very important foundation that you get. In fact, my experience at Wharton was diametrically opposite to my experience at IIT.
Right.
Except the only common factor is I played football for both of them.
Yeah.
But if you take that out, Wharton was a lot about classroom for me. And while a lot of people talk about B schools as a great place to network and get a global perspective, I think for me, those were secondary outcomes. The primary outcome actually was sitting in the class and learning the foundation of finance and marketing and economics, which is serving me well even today.
Right.
So I would say Wharton was a pretty important input. And I was doing private equity even before Wharton. So after McKinsey, I was at Temasek, which is a private equity firm. And I used to claim that I know corporate finance, I can build a model, but I had knew 10% of that.
Sure.
What I needed to know.
Sure.
And sitting in the classroom at Wharton, learning the foundation was a critical input. That has served me well.
What advice do you have for people who are looking to pursue MBA right after the college, or should they wait for a bit? What's your take on it? So does the experience require you to have some work experience before?
Yeah, I think you get more out of it if you've done some work experience because you have more context of what you want out of it. Sure. I mean, MBA is a 2-year program, so it's a short program. You have to be running. You don't have time to step back and think blue sky. Yeah. And very, very much the first internship is kind of what you're looking for as a full-time. So you have to decide what you want to do very quickly. So having done 2-3 years of work experience is valuable. You can also appreciate how businesses work.
Sure.
Even if you've done coding at a tech firm, you at least understand the context of that industry, right? And then you go to the classroom and then they talk about how a business scales and what are the different ways you can grow a business, then you have more context than coming out of IIT and you kind of don't even know what businesses are meant for. Yeah. Right? There's something called a net profit or something called a return on capital. Sure. You have no context, so it's not easy to pick that up. But that's what's happening now, right? I think even IIMs and others are probably looking for work experiences. That's what I've understood from a lot of people.
So it happens both ways, I think. There's a mixed bunch which go right after finishing up their bachelor's. Yeah. And also the B schools welcome them because the tag itself speaks for itself. And also the sort of nurturing that the whole environment gives you is makes one very sharp.
Yeah.
But what about the people who are not very sure of what they want to pursue? And in an age where there are so many opportunities out there, what is that one thing that they should stick to in finding what might work for them? What is your advice for that?
Is this from a figuring out what's next after IIT perspective?
Next after IIT or just to, next after IIT, exactly. Just to enter the career phase of their lives.
Yeah. No, it's very important to figure out what you're passionate about. And in IIT, you can get carried away. You can go into IIT knowing, I'll get a job. But it's not that easy. I mean, some years may be easier than others. Yeah. But eventually, you have to find your own calling. Yeah. So very much the first year is all about trying out everything, figuring out what you like, what you don't like. Yeah. Second year, start focusing on it. But by the time it's end of second year, early third year, you kind of should know what you want out of IIT or after IIT. Sure. If you want to apply to a master's in your core subject, you have to start thinking about that. If you want to start a job, which sector you want to do, you have to think about that upfront. You can't decide that in fourth year, I'm afraid. So I've always advised people from IIT to keep one eye on what's the next step. Yeah. And running a startup is a very interesting opportunity as well. Back in the days, it was not something we would think about at all. Yeah. In fact, maybe one or two of my department would have gone ahead and built something. I'm assuming that is becoming more commonplace now. There's so many people, there's so many resources, there's so many alums you can speak to. So that is something I did less of, but did enough of it that I understood what consulting meant. Yeah. There were 2-3 McKinsey business analysts who were my seniors who I used to speak to, and they helped me a lot in deciding what I should be doing.
Right.
And the fact that I didn't go straight for MBA, waited for a few years, then went for an MBA, all that helped. All that decision came from their inputs. So I would say speak to as many alums as you can. I think that's a very important resource, and alums love that.
Yeah.
I can tell you. Still, I get people from all over the map reaching out to me. I do make sure I take out time for that because, that's what I can give back.
So how can people reach out to you?
You can just email me or just call me or LinkedIn me.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at LinkedIn. I do see my LinkedIn messages and I do send out LinkedIn messages, cold ones as well. So I think it's a very good tool.
Yeah.
I would say just message me and we'll figure out a time to connect.
So you speak of all the retrospective experiences and which have worked out for you. Is there something which you would have done differently had you known better?
At IIT?
During the course of your career?
Okay. This is, I don't know whether it's about different or not, but I could have pushed the envelope a bit more. The Indian education system is geared towards you gaming it, right? At least my high school experience or school experience was a lot about, I have 5 subjects, how do I make sure I get the maximum marks? That was my one and only objective in those years.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, IIT was an extension of that experience. It didn't spark the curiosity that it actually potentially can.
Right.
And I think that would probably be the biggest letdown in my experience. And it's my mistake more than anybody else's that I did not come out of IIT as a really curious individual.
Right.
Purely because I was kind of successfully gaming the system for the last 16 years.
Yeah.
If I had to rewind back, I would take a step back and say, hey, this is the area that I'm really passionate about. And I used to love communications within my electrical engineering department. And the idea of how things move from one point to another was a very interesting one. And how do you transmit information? But I could have delved deeper into it. I could have done more projects in it. I would have gone out and done more internships around it. I just didn't take that initiative. And I can tell you, coming out of IIT as someone who's not as curious as you should have been, it takes another 10 years to get back that curiosity.
Sure.
Because your first job, you kind of again gaming the system, and then you realize going forward, then you find your passion, in my case, in case of investing.
Yes.
That's when your curiosity journey starts. And that way, in a way, I could have done better.
Is that one factor that you actually look for in the founders that you back?
Oh, yes. In fact, at Filter Capital, given we are in the business of investing in founders, we have our own framework for how we assess founders.
Yeah.
And curiosity is up there
Right.
as an important trait.
Right.
Because, for a founder, life is quite uncertain. And that he or she doesn't know everything.
Yeah.
So you need to have the desire to learn and change your perspectives as well. And you won't do it if you're not curious about it.
Absolutely.
And even in our investment business, I think that's probably one of the biggest success criteria is, figuring out new things, challenging yourself and changing your perspectives if you need to. I agree. That is an important trait.
So what has been the best bet that you think has come out of your framework of choosing those founders? Which entity would you...
For me, it's the very easy answer. I have the fortune of backing one of the best entrepreneurs, one of the best companies in tech industry in India today. So I invested in a company called Dream 11, which I think everybody knows. At least people who know cricket will know Dream 11. But back in the days when we invested in Dream 11, it was a very small company. This is way back early 2017.
Yeah.
And it was my one meeting with Harsh, the CEO. I came out saying, man, what a guy. And what a business.
Yeah.
I was in a way fortunate to have done consumer internet at Warburg Pincus. So Warburg has a global, lot of depth in consumer internet globally. And they've done a lot of classified businesses. So they understood the network effects thesis within internet, which in my view is very powerful.
Right.
And fantasy sports actually is a very network effect business because the bigger the pool, the bigger the number of people on the platform, it attracts even more people.
Absolutely.
With the desire to win big prizes.
Absolutely.
So over time, the leader will become a dominant leader while the other guys will kind of be sideways.
Yeah.
And the metrics, the repeat behavior and all the usual metrics you see were great. But I think the biggest reason we backed Dream 11 was Harsh.
Right.
Because, as I said, his calm, the resilience, the curiosity, his people orientation was such a high bar for anyone to meet that it was like we were just And there was a big question on regulation back then about Dream 11. This is way before a lot of the court judgments happened.
Absolutely.
We spent a lot of time on that. We spent a lot of money on that to do the research around it. And we came out with a positive view because eventually we realized that people don't play Dream 11 to make money. People play Dream 11 to win, right? It's a sport.
Yeah.
And if the motivation of the individual is a sport motivation, then it's as good a business as any, because it's helping the young of India to focus on bettering themselves, learning new things, and winning. So yeah, it's that one investment. I think it was a $23 million investment. Multiples exited $550 million from that one investment. So you can't complain. You don't get those deals that often in your career.
Absolutely. So what is the thing that is an ick which turns you off in a founder who probably approaches you for funding?
In fact, I recently read a LinkedIn post from someone I know well.
Yeah.
Who put out a post saying, entrepreneurs build companies for one of these 3 reasons. What is your reason? And he gave 3 reasons, and all 3 reasons in my view are wrong.
Right.
He said power, fame, money. And I think if I find founders who are trying to chase one of these 3 reasons, it's a big negative. Because and I tell every entrepreneur I speak to, these cannot be the reasons to start a company.
Sure.
The other ways to get power, go join politics.
Absolutely.
The other way is to make money. Join a big company, do a great job, you'll make a lot of money. Enough money that you need, right? I mean, beyond the point you don't know what to spend. And you definitely don't want to do anything for fame. And I see a lot of founders, I call them LinkedIn founders.
Yeah.
Because I somehow feel it's very important to market yourself, because for your own company, and we do as well, because we want to make Filter Capital succeed. You are the face of the firm. You want to put out your point of view. You want to share your knowledge. All that is important.
Yeah.
But sometimes I find founders who are on LinkedIn for the heck of their own clout, own ego.
Yeah.
And that's a big negative, because then you're asking the question as to, is this founder there to make a name for himself, or is the founder there to make a name for the company? And founder and company are 2 different entities.
Sure.
So I think that's a trait I look out for. And we've passed on deals, and we found some cases where founders were not doing the right thing because they wanted to protect their reputation and their image and focused on company less, which doesn't scale in the long term.
Sure. So 2 questions, 2-part questions now. So what can IIT Delhi do better to nurture the people there, to have a strong foundation to pursue a career in finance? That's one. And also what they can also do better in terms of making sure that they are good entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I don't know about what IIT can do better to nurture people for finance. Honestly, the IIT is engineering school.
Yeah, I understand.
They can do a lot to do better for engineering itself.
Sure.
And I'm not the right one to talk about it, because I didn't end up being an engineer, and my friends who ended up doing PhDs, and they probably will have better insight into this. But definitely I can tell you in IIT, I was in electrical engineering, right? So there was a motor lab. It's like some of the motors didn't work. So I'm sure it's better now than it was back then, but there's a lot can be done on the infrastructure side.
Yeah.
Just the basic infrastructure across the board to make sure the students get the best of experience.
Yeah.
And from an academic curriculum perspective, a lot can be done to make it more practical than theoretical.
Sure.
And that is something that I appreciated at Wharton, is everything was around a certain reality around you, right? You take a company and dissect it, but that company is real. While in IIT, we're still stuck in the worlds of X's and Y's and Z's, right? Which kind of is not easy to relate to. So there's a lot that can be done on that front. And with the kind of students quality and faculty quality we have, there's no reason why we can't be the number 1 engineering college.
Yeah.
When it comes to, sorry, what was the second thing from a
entrepreneurship perspective?
Entrepreneurship. Yeah, back then we didn't have an entrepreneurship orientation at IIT. We had a small group, I think called FITT.
Yes, it's still there.
Yeah, we barely even interacted with them. Nobody was encouraging us to think about starting up as a career option, rather than go and find a job or apply for or a college. I'm assuming those would have changed because folks like Sachin Bansal and others have come out of IIT and built huge businesses.
Yes.
So I'm sure when you see that success, the students themselves get aligned.
True.
But the risk taking that likes of Stanford encourage, I'm sure there's more to be done by IIT.
Yeah.
Whether you can allow professors and students to start companies, own equity, even while at college, maybe it's come up already. Whether you get industry to work very closely with the colleges, and not industry kind of doing some side experiment, but some a company doing a core research along with IIT and students. And all those things can go a long way in exposing students to the real world.
Yeah.
Right. Only when you this works, and then only the spark will start coming in his mind or her mind that you can build a company. Why do you have to join one? That's the right way to do it.
And I think one of the key interfaces which can be beneficial for students is obviously the extensive network of alumni. So what sort of a vision do you hold for this ecosystem of students and alumni who are navigating either at the onset of their career or at the other end to succeed? And what does it mean to succeed in your point of view?
Yeah, well, I can get very philosophical if you ask me that question on success, but let me restrict it to professional success.
Yeah.
I mean, given the kind of alumni base we have, there's so much that we can do in terms of helping each other. And it's already happening, by the way. I mean, I've personally invested in one of our IIT Delhi alums company, LoadShare, run by Raghuram, my batchmate actually from IIT. So that relationship, that trust that gets built over through the alumni association is immense. But there's more that can be done, I'm sure. For example, Pan IIT, I see a little more action in US than in India.
Sure.
So I see the US alumni network is more strong in some ways because of that. And I know there's a Pan IIT happening in December.
Yes.
In Bangalore.
Yeah.
I would say let's do more of that. Let's do everywhere in India.
Sure.
Not just Bangalore, but do it in Mumbai, Delhi, Calcutta. Take them to smaller cities because the IITians everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best forum for people to get to meet each other.
Yeah.
And we went through COVID and everything being online, but there's nothing that can replace physically catching up with each other.
Yeah.
And if you just create those platforms, then automatically, organically, people will help each other and will be a massive value add to the system.
Yeah. And what's your take on the future for entrepreneurship and venture capital?
So the way my partner likes to say that the next 20 years in India are more exciting than the last 20 years. And the 20 years after that will be more exciting than the next 20 years.
Sure.
So I believe the future is only bright. And we went through a shakeout recently. We're going through a little bit of a slowdown, which I think is great for the system because you have to correct some of the mindsets on both investing and startup side as to how a business is built.
Yeah.
And shakeouts like this help you course correct, and then you focus on the right way of scaling. But given the Indian macro, given the quality of talent, and I would say given the risk-taking embedded in the Indian culture, I mean, we are traders, right? I mean, we are more risk takers than many other cultures potentially are.
Sure.
And given this combination of these three, I think the startup ecosystem will only go bigger.
Yeah.
And from an investing side of it, I've seen massive amount of capital coming from Indian families and HNIs and institutions which were not participating in startup investing as of 5 years ago.
Yes.
And that will only go bigger. And the future is only bright. And but there'll be stumbles on the way, which I think are very important for the ecosystem.
What's the one thing that now you would say on that note to someone who is an IIT or who is looking up to you? Something they'll say.
Yeah.
To what does the future hold? How to navigate it? That's a camera.
Yeah, I would say just find what you're passionate about. Take the time. Don't rush into it. Try out everything. But you find what you're passionate about, just go double down on that. Whether it's certain area of research, whether it's certain type of profession, certain idea. And let everyone help you to succeed in that. And so don't spend the 4 years not finding it, because if you don't, then the rest of the 10 years will become more challenging for you, and you'll take much more time finding that. That'll be my message.
Sure. Just to wrap it up, you do a this or that, a rapid fire sort of situation.
Oh yeah, is it? Okay.
So IIT Delhi or Wharton?
IIT Delhi. There's no way Wharton comes close from the heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your hostel or a department?
Hostel.
Hostel.
Yeah.
KLS or mess?
KLS. Yeah, KLS.
Library or SAC?
SAC, of course.
The first year or fourth year?
Good. It's a close one. I would still say first year though.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's a new, honestly.
Is it? Yeah.
And what about Sadi Delhi or Amchi Mumbai?
Delhi. I love Bombay for my life, for my family, but I love Delhi for myself.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That wraps it up. Thank you for taking out the time.
Thank you.
And
Thank
doing
you.
this.
Yeah, good fun.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Really appreciate it.